Tonight, the Liberal tent opens wide right as a long-time Conservative MP crosses the floor.
Expertise, experience, and energy coming to our team.
A new defection in aid of the government's quest for a clear majority. Ceasefire confusion. The bombing hasn't stopped. The Strait of Hormuz hasn't reopened.
We have a regime in Iran that is more radical, more extreme, more hardline.
As Jeremy Hansen helps plot a return from the moon, pride and anxiety wait on the home front.
It feels like we're along for this ride, and Jeremy's heart is on display, which is beautiful to see.
My conversation with Catherine Hansen.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. Just about 1 year after Mark Carney's Liberals formed a minority government, a stunning new floor crossing has put them on the cusp of a working majority. Four-term Ontario Conservative MP Marilyn Gladu is now the fifth MP to join the government. And with three key by-elections next week, the number of Liberal seats could rise even higher. Ashley Burke looks at what Gladu's defection means for the parliamentary balance of power and how some of her constituents really feel about it.
Another sudden announcement called so the Prime Minister could introduce the latest MP to defect to his party.
We couldn't be happier to have this expertise, experience, and energy coming to our team.
Ontario MP Marilyn Gladu jumping ship after more than a decade serving as a Conservative.
He's invited me to bring my experience, my talents, and my views into the large Liberal tent.
Some of her views may clash with her new colleagues. Gladu opposed legalizing cannabis.
The doubling of traffic deaths, and Liberals don't care.
Voted against banning conversion therapy, was forced to apologize for questioning the seriousness of COVID-19 and the need for vaccine mandates. Gladu also said during her leadership bid she'd allow private member bills to restrict abortion.
Look, we are interested in unity, not uniformity. And if you really want to unite the country, you want people with lots of different views.
It's the fifth MP from other parties to cross the floor since the fall. Lori Idlow joining from the NDP, and four Conservatives breaking rank, delivering blows to leader Pierre Poilievre.
That will undermine Mr. Poilievre's ability to tell the rest of the country that his whole team is behind him and he's ready to lead.
Poilievre online accusing Carney once again of seizing a costly Liberal majority that voters denied him, and doing so through backroom deals. Some of Gladu's constituents seem to agree.
I honestly feel quite betrayed by it. I voted for her for a reason. I didn't vote for the Liberal government.
I don't like it. I voted Conservative, and those are my views. I'm not a Liberal.
I really believe she's made a moral choice to switch to a party that is all about Canada.
The Liberals now have more MPs in the House of Commons than the opposition because there are vacant seats. But there are three by-elections on Monday, including in two Liberal strongholds. If they win at least one of them, they'll secure a majority government. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
To break down this floor crossing for us even further, CBC News Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton joins us now. So, Rosie, this Liberal tent seems to be getting bigger. Could that create problems for the Prime Minister?
Yeah, I mean, as you heard from Ashley there, some of the views Gladu has previously expressed don't necessarily line up with what would be traditional Liberal values, I would suggest, Adrienne. So the Liberal Party has shifted under the Prime Minister, that's for sure. Mark Carney is pulling support from the left. He brought in an NDP MP. He is trying to bring in the former deputy leader of the Ontario NDP, who's running as a Liberal in the by-election on Monday. And now from the right, four Conservatives, including Gladu, who certainly holds the most socially conservative viewpoints of any of them. So yeah, this might cause the Prime Minister some problems as he tries to manage a caucus with all of these really divergent views. But when you're in government, when you are potentially days away from a majority government, the grumbling from inside or outside caucus might not be quite as intense.
And Rosie, what about the consequences for Pierre Poilievre's leadership?
losing 4 MPs is a problem, obviously, for the Conservative leader, even if no one in his caucus is calling for him to leave publicly today. This shows how challenging it is for him to keep his broad coalition together. And if the Liberals manage to clinch this majority, Adrian, that might get some of those Conservative backbenchers wondering if they want to sit in the opposition benches for this particular leader for years yet.
All right, thanks, Rosie. That is CBC News chief political correspondent Rosemary Barton in Ottawa. Barely 24 hours after Donald Trump announced a ceasefire in the Middle East war he started, the terms of the agreement with Iran seemed completely up in the air. Katie Nicholson takes us through a pretty confusing day.
Hours into the ceasefire, a victory party of sorts spilled into the streets of Tehran. While on state media, leaders flexed.
Iran's Air Force.
So too did the Trump administration.
Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V military victory.
Both countries claim the upper hand as confusion swirls around whether the Strait of Hormuz is open, whether Lebanon is included in the agreement, and whether a ceasefire is truly in place.
Ceasefires are fragile by nature.
In the middle of the White House press briefing, reports of new bombing in Iran.
Who is bombing Iran right now?
Were those reports just as of a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously I'll have to go back and check with the national security team.
And then there's the murky question of what's in Iran's 10-point proposal. U.S. President Donald Trump initially called it a workable basis on which to negotiate. The Iranians say that plan grants them control over the Strait of Hormuz, allows them to continue enriching uranium, and forces the U.S. military to withdraw from the region. That, the press secretary insists, is a totally different plan.
The Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump.
There is, she said, a more reasonable plan on the table now. But after 6 weeks of hammering Iran with 13,000 strikes, Democrats say the U.S. is worse off.
We have a regime in Iran that is more radical, more extreme, more hardline than the one before.
And then there's the Strait of Hormuz, which before the war was open.
Now Iran has clearly established that it can control the strait and is even talking about charging tolls.
The status of the strait now and how it will operate in the future, just one of the many points to be ironed out this weekend in face-to-face talks in Islamabad. The U.S. contingent led by the confident vice president.
Frankly, the president has all the cards here. We've got a lot of leverage. We've got a lot of things that we can do. But right now, I think that we're in a good spot.
Vance also made it clear Iran would not be allowed to continue enriching uranium despite what Iranian leaders continue to say.
And Katie, this as Trump takes aim at NATO for not taking a bigger role in this conflict.
Yeah, and the Wall Street Journal is even reporting he's got a plan to pull U.S. troops out of European nations that didn't help. So NATO's Secretary General met with Trump at the White House today to emphasize the alliance's contributions to the war. And a short while later, Trump repeated his criticism in an online post, saying that NATO wasn't there when we needed them and won't be there if we need them again. Remember Greenland? That big, poorly run piece of ice.
All right. That is Katie Nicholson in Washington tonight. World leaders were quick to support any effort to stop the bombs from falling and reopen the strait, including Canada's Prime Minister.
Look, it's a good day. I think we should recognize the positive developments in the last few hours. More needs to be done. There's lots of tricky issues, as we know, and when we say peace, we mean peace in the region, including Lebanon.
Those two sentiments echoed elsewhere, with the UN saying that continued violence in the region threatens to spoil the truce. And as Sasha Petrusik shows us, regardless of whether Lebanon is part of the ceasefire, it's a battlefield in this conflict. And over the past day, it's gotten even deadlier, making the truce with Iran even more tenuous.
100 Israeli airstrikes hit Lebanon within 10 minutes, leaving Beirut neighborhoods buried. Israel calls it the heaviest day of bombardment in years, saying it was going after Hezbollah militants. Residents were expecting a ceasefire.
We are living in a nightmare. So I'm afraid today to sleep.
The attacks also defied the expectations of Iran and Pakistani mediators, who say the truce agreement included Lebanon.
And it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case.
In fact, Israel insists the whole ceasefire is not the end of the military campaign, but a stop on the way to achieving our goals, says Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. With more fighting to come if Iran doesn't give up its enriched uranium and if Hezbollah threatens. He says he supports U.S. President Donald Trump's negotiation effort, despite his own push for all-out war against a regime he calls an existential threat to Israel. Opposition party leader Yair Lapid condemns the ceasefire as a diplomatic disaster, with Trump's priorities overshadowing Israel's. Rockets started raining on northern Israel again after the Israeli strikes, Hezbollah saying it wouldn't stay quiet. Border residents like Sarit Zahavi running to safe rooms.
I want to have peace and security for my family. If the only way to do it is to continue to fight Hezbollah and to continue to fight Iran, so be it.
With most Israelis supporting the war and many skeptical that a decisive blow has been dealt to Iran and its proxies, Israel isn't looking for the same off-ramp as the U.S. is.
And Sasha, Iran is now saying it will stand by its Hezbollah allies.
That's right. Iranian news agencies were reporting today that Tehran was threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz again if the attacks in Lebanon didn't stop. Washington and here in Israel, they've rejected that demand, but the U.S. says that Israel has promised to check itself.
Okay, that is Sasha Petrusek in Jerusalem. Thank you. The Artemis II astronauts are getting closer to their much-anticipated return home after their historic fly around the moon. As Karen Pauls tells us, the crew had another busy day in space, speaking to the Prime Minister and sharing more about how they're preparing to safely land on Earth.
Artemis II's Flight Day 8 started with this wake-up song and a message from the Canadian Space Agency.
Canadians everywhere are inspired by your journey, and we're with you every step of the way. Let's go.
The astronauts are making their way back to Earth after their historic lunar flyby, and they're sending back more photos of the moon in deep space, like this shot of our galaxy, the Milky Way. They're also doing some troubleshooting, trying to figure out why the toilet still isn't working properly. Christina Cook, who's also known as the space plumber, did a urine dump for technicians to study.
We love a good blizzard.
The less said about the snow, the better.
Integrity, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
The crew also did a live space-to-Earth connection with the Canadian Space Agency, where the Prime Minister brought virtual greetings.
I'm absolutely thrilled to be speaking with you, Jeremy, and the crew. We've all been watching and inspired. You know, it strikes us in Canada, there's such an incredible team.
He asked what lessons they've learned about teamwork and cooperation.
You can see we got our flags here together. We're better together. I'll just say one word about teamwork is willingness. I am honored to serve alongside Jeremy, Josh, and Jenny, truly the finest astronauts I have ever met.
We are an example, I hope, of that collaboration.
But their day wasn't over yet. During what might be the first deep space news conference ever, they were asked how they're preparing for re-entry.
I'll be honest and say I've actually been thinking about entry since April 3rd, 2023, when we got assigned to this mission. We have to get back. There's so much data that you've seen already, but all the good stuff is coming back with us. There's so many more pictures, so many more stories, and gosh, I haven't even begun to process what we've been through.
It's looking like we'll have some favorable conditions for a nice landing.
For NASA, the focus is also on re-entry.
We're down to the wire now. We're down to the end of the mission, and obviously getting the crew back home and getting them landed safely is a significant part of the risk that's still in front of us.
The crew is starting to prepare their cabin and study re-entry procedures for splashdown, which is supposed to take place just after 8 o'clock Eastern on Friday. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Ian will host special coverage of the Artemis II splashdown on Friday, starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBC News Network and wherever you stream CBC. And as the world watches with awe and wonder, the families of the crew are waiting with anticipation for their return to Earth.
I can guarantee I'll be holding hands on both sides of me very tightly and anticipating the 3 good shoots and the splashdown.
My interview with Jeremy Hansen's wife, Dr. Catherine Hansen, coming up. Plus, mounting tensions in Nova Scotia over cannabis dispensaries and First Nations treaty rights. And
the first thing he said was, "You got to teach me how to do that," which is like literally what I do. So that was pretty cool.
a BC basketball game gets a surprise visitor with some pretty big star power. We're back in 2.
On the record with number 8, Rex Schumann.
In a Long Island courtroom, serial killer Rex Heuermann pleaded guilty to murdering 8 women, abruptly ending a decades-long case. He was arrested in 2023, more than 10 years after the first 4 bodies were discovered. The 62-year-old murdered his victims over a roughly 20-year period, leaving their remains on remote beaches across Long Island. And the woman known as the Ketamine Queen, who pleaded guilty to selling the dose that killed actor Matthew Perry, has been sentenced to 15 years in prison. Perry's stepfather, the broadcaster Keith Morrison, had some harsh words for her.
You'd have to have a heart of stone to wake up every morning and make a business out of feeding off the addictions of vulnerable people. If you don't feel some sense of shame or sorrow, then you're not even human. And she is clearly human.
Jasveen Sangha told the courtroom she wears her shame like a jacket. Perry died from acute effects of ketamine, causing the 54-year-old to drown in a hot tub at his Los Angeles home in 2023. Well, Nova Scotia has passed new legislation to bring tougher penalties to those selling unregulated cannabis. The move mostly impacts Indigenous communities who argue it steps on their treaty rights. Kayla Hounsell shows us how tensions are getting higher.
The inflection point after months of tension between the Nova Scotia government and Mi'kmaq communities over the sale of unregulated cannabis. Protesters blocking a highway.
Fucking guns that fucking big?
Police abandoning their vehicles after a raid on a cannabis shop on the Bodledek First Nation in Cape Breton. They arrested 2 people, including this man.
I practice my treaty rights. Number one foremost, I was born in Mi'kmaq.
The Mounties say they found their vehicles with broken windows, damaged tires, and urine-soaked interiors. The Bodledek Band Council says it does not condone these actions.
We're just having a peaceful protest. We want to be heard that, the RCMP can't just come into our community and do what they want to do.
We're not targeting anyone.
In December, Nova Scotia's Justice Minister directed police to crack down on illegal dispensaries. Late Tuesday night, the provincial government passed legislation bringing in tougher penalties. The government points to a Health Canada survey that shows Nova Scotia youth are using marijuana at higher rates than anywhere else in the country and above the national average of 23.2%. But the Mi'kmaq say selling cannabis is a treaty right.
There's been no legal precedent for that cannabis is a treaty right, so the position is that it is not a treaty right.
The government bases that on this court decision that finds how the treaties are interpreted must be based on a foundation that warrants consideration. At this time, that foundation has not been established for cannabis sales outside the lawful regime, and the existing regime applies to all Nova Scotians.
And I don't think that lower court decision is right. It's not about treating all Nova Scotians the same. It's recognizing that there are constitutionally protected rights that take priority over all other interests.
This shop has reopened, but the debate around who has a right to profit from the sale of marijuana may be just getting started. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
There are warnings tonight from health officials about the dangers of extreme workouts.
I felt like I was dying.
What we're learning about a potentially dangerous muscle condition. Plus,
there really is an incredible human element to this, and Jeremy's heart is on display, which is beautiful to see.
What it's like waiting for your loved ones to return from space. I speak with Jeremy Hansen's wife, Catherine, next. Newfoundland and Labrador is reporting an unusual spike in an illness caused by exercising too intensely. The condition is called rhabdo for short, and it can lead to grave outcomes. Jennifer LaGrassa got some advice on how to avoid it.
Kyra Fancy was a fit 24-year-old when she went to her first ever spin class.
I didn't know anything bad could come out of it other than some sore muscles.
But in the days after, the pain in her legs became excruciating.
I felt like I was dying.
At the hospital, doctors said she had exertional or exercise-induced rhabdomyolysis. The condition known as rhabdo can happen after intense exercise, when muscle tissue breaks down and leaks proteins into the bloodstream. At high amounts, these proteins are dangerous. Symptoms include extreme pain, swelling, and dark-colored urine. This expert says in severe but rare cases, it can lead to kidney failure.
If you damage kidneys, that can lead to the need for dialysis. That would be the worst outcome.
This type of rhabdo isn't tracked nationally, but since October, Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services says it's seen an unusual spike. 20 people, mostly women between 19 to 30 years old, have gone to hospital ERs with the illness.
Hey, come on!
Experts suggest fitness trends and social media are playing a role.
People posting what they're doing and kind of challenging their friends.
Going all out during a workout or getting back into fitness after a break, along with heat and dehydration, can increase the risk of rhabdo.
Stay hydrated, listen to your body, start off slow if you're changing activities.
This Ontario gym says it's focused on making sure everyone works out safely.
Our instructor is constantly saying, okay, take a sip and train within your limits.
Though Fancy has fully recovered from her rhabdo scare in 2023, she can't shake what happened.
I still struggle with panic attack sometimes.
She wants others to be more aware so they don't have to go through what she did. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor, Ontario.
Air Canada is testing a new way to settle compensation claims in an effort to clear its massive backlog of passenger complaints. Philippe de Montigny now with how the pilot project works and why some industry experts have doubts.
For customers seeking compensation for things like delays or cancellations, the wait with the Canadian Transportation Agency can be lengthy, currently up to 3 years.
It's painstaking because I don't know, I think they probably get rejected outright as a matter of course, and then, you know, it's a waiting game.
To speed up the process, Air Canada is testing out a new arbitration process using an independent third party. For about 500 customers, the arbitrator will have up to 90 days to rule on each case. The results would be non-binding for the passengers.
Whatever decision emanates from the arbitration, we will be bound by it, Air Canada, but they will not be bound by it. If they wish to pursue their claim before the CTA after the arbitral decision, they can do that.
Despite the CTA hiring more workers, the airline's watchdog has a backlog of roughly 96,000 complaints.
It's a pretty expedited way of getting a resolution for the passenger.
I personally have never had a problem, but if I did, I would not be happy about having to wait 2 or 3 years. So good for Air Canada then.
The airline hired the Canadian Aviation Dispute Resolution. Its parent company, the CDRL Group, is based out of the UK and operates across Europe. Experts are concerned about Air Canada's choice.
We need some sort of independent oversight, hopefully government oversight, to make sure that if the carriers are paying for this, that they're not winning all of the cases. That would be one huge red flag.
Air Canada plans to share the results of its pilot project with the federal government this summer, and then it'll be up to Ottawa to decide whether or not it wants to set up and fund its own arbitration system. Philippe de Montigny, CBC News, Mississauga.
So, what is it like to watch from Earth as your husband makes history in space? In tonight's breakdown, we ask an expert. The eyes of the world are on her husband, but Ketamine Hansen got to hear what he's really going through.
He is really, really excited about being out there in the cosmos.
Last night, after the historic flyby on the dark side of the moon, they had a family chat.
He told us that he absolutely loves zero gravity.
How one special moment touched her family and so many others.
There wasn't a dry eye on the planet.
I spoke with Ketamine Hansen earlier today. Dr. Ketamine Hansen, Jeremy Hansen's wife, joins us now. Dr. Hansen, when he gets home from space, do you think he will ever stop talking about this?
Absolutely not. That is a really good point. We had a private family conference last night and we asked him one question and it was a very long run-on sentence about how much fun he's having. So I anticipate the stories will be very exciting, very ongoing, and very much what he wants to share.
Every dinner party from here on in, it's going to be about space. There is so much communication now from space, you know, and I think we were all witness to, you know, an almost private moment when the crew was on the far side of the moon, and then he sent a message to you. For those who missed it, let's just listen in for a moment.
I don't know if Catherine and Devin are still there, but if they are, just wanted to just let them know how much fun we're having out here. It's extraordinary to be on the far side of the moon right now, just seeing hanging out there and looking back at the Earth. And Ashley and Kaylin, I know you're back in Canada, but if you happen to be watching too, just wanted to say hi to all you guys. Love you guys, and we'll be heading back your way shortly.
Thanks, Jeremy. I hear they are watching, and your family is still here.
I think I might have been a hot mess hearing that. Were you?
Yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. It feels like we're along for this ride, and my hope is that most of Canada also feels like they're along for this ride. There really is an incredible human element to this, and Jeremy's heart is on display, which is beautiful to see.
So I gather that you, all of you as a family, you sort of ended up training in a way for this, right? Prepping and talking. But as you watch him, is there something you've learned about him that you didn't know before?
First of all, the crew, which I knew were very, very close and cohesive friends, but watching them up there support each other and love on each other and really get each other through what is probably a lot more challenging than we are realizing is really amazing to see. I think that they were always best of friends, and it's going to be an even greater bond. And I think the other really amazing thing, and especially in our conversation last night, is that the science is intriguing to him in a lot more emphatic ways than I was expecting. We have binoculars, we've been looking at the moon, we have study guides all over our house, but to watch him actually see it and get so excited about the 3D components of it and the ways that when the sun went behind the moon, it was like this globe that they wanted to reach out to. He is really, really excited about being out there in the cosmos.
The more people we talk with about this Artemis mission, the more they say how I think unexpectedly emotional it is to witness. I mean, you're sort of alluding to that, but I think nowhere was that more clear than when Jeremy, on behalf of the crew, named that crater in honor of Carol Weissman, Reed Weissman's wife, who passed away from cancer in 2020. Again, for people who maybe didn't see it, let's just play that back.
There's a feature in a really neat place on the moon, and it is on the near side, far side boundary. In fact, it's just on the near side of that boundary, and so at certain times of the moon's transit around Earth, we will be able to see this from Earth. And so we lost a loved one. Her name was Carol, the spouse of Reed, the mother of Katie and Ellie. And if you want to find this one, you look at Glushko, and it's just to the northwest of that, at the same latitude as Ohm, and it's a bright spot on the moon. And we would like to call it Carol, and you spell that C-A-R-R-O-L-L.
Did you know that was coming? How important that was for Jeremy and the crew?
We had some conversations about the possibility that they may identify some unnamed markings on the moon, and that there may be the ability to map it and to officially name it after our dear friend Carol. And I didn't know when it was coming or if they would be able to do that. But when we watched real time with all of you and with the world, there wasn't a dry eye on the planet. And my family, commented to me, Dad's crying. And it was really incredible to see for us, but to also see the way they brought in everyone watching to allow us to really feel how monumental that moment was, and how important it was for that crew, and I think for everyone to realize just the importance of family. And we will now look up at the moon and see that bright spot called Carol, and we will never forget that moment.
When you're able to follow up something like that with a private chat, how does that help everybody's anxiety at home?
Yeah, we had quite a bit of conversation about that, and Jeremy just mentioned that he knew that it would be emotional, and he knew that it would be monumental. He knew that it might be hard to get through, but what he said was he didn't realize the crew would basically all break down and really need to hold each other and close that loop between them.
There's also sort of the lovely mundane things about being in a partnership, and I'm so curious, in any of the calls, has he asked about the orchids in your kitchen? Because you posted about that. He seems to have a thing for those plants.
The interesting thing is he's asked about a lot of things, but he hasn't actually asked about the orchids, but I think I know why. He watered them just before he left. He's on a 10-day mission, and he's probably pretty convinced they'll make it until he gets home. He probably doesn't want me messing with them, knowing that they will be waiting.
Fair enough. What's your sense of how he's sleeping or dreaming? I hear Jeremy is a world-class napper.
He is a world-class napper. It is one of his greatest skill sets, and he's sleeping very well, as are all the crew. And he told us that he absolutely loves zero gravity. He feels like a kid up there, and he would stay there forever if it meant that he could have us along with him.
So they're coming home. This has to feel great for you. It's not easy as a family. What is your sense of what re-entry will entail?
This entire ride has been a lot of uncertainty, adapting, changing timelines, preparing ourselves for things that we don't know what we don't know, and Splashdown is one of those things. I really have no idea what to expect. I've heard people at NASA saying, what haven't we thought of, and what are the things that we can prepare for, that we can maybe do better at preparing for. And that's kind of how I feel. But I really don't know what's coming, and I really don't know what it's going to feel like in that moment. I can guarantee I'll be holding hands on both sides of me very tightly, and anticipating the 3 good shoots and the splashdown, and of course the rescue of the team.
Fantastic. Well, all of Canada will be right there with you, and really hoping for a fantastic homecoming. Dr. Hansen, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Artemis II splashdown is set for Friday, and Ian will host special coverage starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. You can watch it all happen live on CBC News Network or wherever you stream CBC. Up next, Donald Trump is declaring another triumph, this time for the ceasefire in Iran. But can all the pieces really fall into place?
I'm skeptical that the two sides can agree to a broader peace deal, because I think they're just very far apart.
Andrew Chang guides us through the contradictions to try to see what has really been agreed to. Getting the facts on a ceasefire means sorting through the spin.
Iran begged for this ceasefire, and we all know it.
There are major open questions like what is really in the deal and who has the upper hand.
6 weeks later, Iran is much stronger geostrategically than it was when this war began.
Andrew Chang, host of CBC's About That, breaks down this breaking news.
The problem with ceasefires is that they're often confusing because they're contingent on things that just raise more questions. Even the classic, "I'll stop shooting if you stop shooting," begs the question, well, who stops shooting first? Or to place this in the big news today, Donald Trump announcing a double-sided ceasefire, wherein he says, "I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran, but subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz." This seems straightforward. World oil starts moving again, bombing stops. Until you realize that Iran's take on that same point frames it a little differently. Safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible via coordination with Iran's armed forces and with due consideration of technical limitations. Which could mean everything from go ahead through, the water's fine, to actually coordination is just another word for payment, and technical limitations might refer to the mines we've planted in the water. Watch out for those. And never mind the fact that the Strait of Hormuz never officially closed in the first place. It's always been open, but ships don't go through because they don't want to risk getting blown up. So if the ceasefire doesn't even begin until we see the safe opening of the strait, what does that mean, and on whose terms?
Right now, the entire world looking at this 2 weeks to see if some of these details can be worked out for a ceasefire agreement, but it is a delicate moment in the region and a lot of moving parts.
I say all of this not because I hold the key to everyone's coded diplomatic language.
President Trump forged this moment. Iran begged for this ceasefire, and we all know it.
I don't, but I understand vagueness when I see it, and I'll show it to you, starting not with the Strait of Hormuz, but with something that is much more clearly contradictory. So where does the ceasefire actually apply? One thing that can get lost in all of the fighting happening in Iran is all of the fighting happening in Lebanon.
Israel already launched strikes on Bekaa in southern Lebanon. The military has warned of more strikes after Hezbollah fired into Israel.
This is a map from the Institute for the Study of War. They've done a great job chronicling confirmed Hezbollah strikes against Israeli targets. Those are the red triangles, as well as claimed Hezbollah strikes in that yellowy orange. Israel has had boots on the ground in Lebanon since the very earliest days of the war. They say they're fighting Iran through its proxy, Hezbollah. And here's the ISW's tally of just how extensive that ground war has been. Nearly 1,500 claimed Hezbollah attacks over more than 30 days. And the Israeli Defense Forces, too, have been claiming wins, publishing illustrations of its strikes against key river crossings inside Lebanon, and actual footage, graphic footage, I'll point out, that the IDF claims to show actual attacks on members of Hezbollah. Like this footage showing a group of people on a pair of motorcycles, one of them being hit, sending the riders on the other running for their lives. I point all of this out because you'd think it would be made explicitly clear in the announcement of a ceasefire whether it applies to Lebanon. It did, according to a pretty good source, the country mediating the ceasefire itself. It covers everywhere, including Lebanon. Except Lebanon, as it continued facing Israeli bombardment, wondered what was getting lost in translation. Hezbollah's fighting force seemed to think the fighting should end, but Israel said explicitly the ceasefire does not apply in its war.
The Pakistani mediator said the ceasefire does include Lebanon. Israel immediately shot back and said absolutely it doesn't, and it stepped up attacks on Lebanon.
I think that's very confusing to the public and leaves a lot of questions to the public about what should we expect.
I think this comes from a legitimate misunderstanding. I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states.
As of the moment I record this, every headline I've seen suggests the Israeli point of view, at least so far, is unchanged, which effectively means there is no current agreement on exactly where this ceasefire applies, which is a problem.
We're seeing that because of these strikes in Beirut, Iran is now saying that oil tankers can't get through the strait.
Iran would be wise to find a way to get the carrier pigeon to their troops out in remote locations to know not to shoot any longer one-way attacks or missiles, because this it takes time sometimes for ceasefires to take hold. We're watching it. We're prepared if necessary, but we hope and believe that it'll hold.
When Trump's Secretary of War was asked about how he understands the conditions Iran has placed on reopening the Strait of Hormuz,
Iran has said that safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible in coordination with Iran's armed forces and, quote, technical limitations. What do you believe that means?
his reply was to avoid the question entirely and simply restate the goal, as opposed to how any of it would work or what anything means.
What we know is that Iran is going to say a lot of things. A lot of people are going to say a lot of things, claim a lot of things. What has been agreed to, what's been stated, is the strait is open. Our military is watching. I'm sure their military is watching, but commerce will flow.
Now, no one is saying ceasefires ought to have every term set in stone, but how do you close the gap between the two sides? The U.S. insisting on restoring free passage, but Iran arguing the opposite. Iran is believed to be charging some ships up to $2 million in one case for safe passage through the strait. This had enough momentum that at one point there were reports Iran and Oman, which controls the other side of the strait, they might both be expecting to profit from tanker traffic. Except, most recently, Oman shut that idea down, a direct contradiction of what Iran had planned. So where is this going? Well, let's add one more layer, and you'll see. Trump posts the morning after the ceasefire's announced. The United States of America will be helping with the traffic buildup in the Strait of Hormuz. There will be lots of positive action. Big money will be made. Big money will be made. What's he talking about there? Like, everybody can get back to making money because oil will flow again? Or is Trump moving in on the deal Oman just rejected? He's reported to have told ABC's chief Washington correspondent that maybe the Strait of Hormuz should be paid to pass, as long as the U.S. gets a cut. A beautiful thing, he reportedly said. It's a way of securing it, also securing it from lots of other people.
It's an idea the president has floated, as you know, and it's something that will continue to be discussed over the course of the next 2 weeks. But the immediate priority of the president is the reopening of the strait without any limitations, whether in the form of tolls or otherwise.
The point here being that there is nothing simple or straightforward about this ceasefire, about where it takes effect, or even how its preconditions can be satisfied. And all of this is to say nothing of how you get a ceasefire with an uncertain starting point to hold. Consider how far apart the two sides have long been on these critical points of negotiation. Iran's nuclear program, the lifting of sanctions, the unfreezing of assets, the costs of reconstruction, the withdrawal of U.S. forces.
We'll stay put, stay ready, stay vigilant, as the chairman laid out. Our troops are prepared to defend, prepared to go on offense, prepared to restart at a moment's notice.
Plus, the very inconvenient fact that this war started while the U.S. and Iran were in the midst of negotiations on some of these very issues. At face value, all sides seem to want for this ceasefire to work. But for it to truly stand a chance, there will have to be good faith, trust, and clarity that so far the two sides have not been able to find.
Now, the next round of face-to-face talks in Pakistan is set for Friday. The White House says Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to attend. Coming up, Adam Sandler crashes a local basketball game in Vancouver.
Everyone was like really starstruck.
Their celebrity matchup next in our moment. So this may be a familiar face. Movie star Adam Sandler recently walked into a Vancouver gym just to play basketball with some locals. So players apparently pretty starstruck when he got on the court, even more surprised when he played 9 games. Their celebrity hoops makes our moment.
We kind of got wind that Adam Sandler was going to be coming to play. I was training with my student and he showed up. I grabbed the ball and I go do like a double pump reverse dunk right in front of the rim, and as Adam's like walking right by. First thing he said was, "You got to teach me how to do that," which is like literally what I do. So that was pretty cool. be like, fist bumps me. Everyone was like really starstruck. He comes in and he's stretching and everyone is just like nervous and waiting to play with him. We played like the first game. I got the first couple buckets in a row. There was like a moment where I was like, oh, I kind of feel bad. I'm about to like 7-0 Adam Sandler. I almost took my foot off the gas, but I just kept going. He appreciated that intensity. He played probably like 8 or 9 games and everyone was really having a great time. It's still not really clicking, to be honest. I've watched a lot of his movies. If anything, I'm thinking, wow, like if the guy ever wants basketball training, I'd love to be his guy.
This is fantastic. And this is not a first. This is a thing Adam Sandler does. Last summer, he crashed a game in Toronto. He's been spotted in a few places in BC. It's what he does when he goes places to make movies. From all of us at The National, thanks for being with us. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.